I do want to pick up on something John Rowe noted, that the Archbishop is here because Senator Durbin and I were with the Archbishop at Old St. Pat's on St. Patty's Day. And I said to the Archbishop then, I said, if we all have to be Irish today, you have to be Jewish on Yom Kippur and starve for 24 hours and listen to the rabbi. So, and I said, we're not going to be happy until you start reading from right to left rather than left to right. So, Archbishop, thank you. And I do want to, if I could, do a shout out to the Archbishop, but he had come to Chicago, and within just a couple weeks, the city of Chicago partnered with the Archbishop. He had made a phone call to my office, and we talked about making sure that the children on the border from Central America knew that they had a home here in the city of Chicago, and that as they fled the violence, and that we would become a refugee city, to make sure, and I say that because as we're here for the Holocaust, to remember, to not forget, but also to guide our own judgments of our actions. There was a boat, the St. Louis, children from Germany, that was turned away. And if you read the history, you have to wonder, if you're in your own moment, would you turn kids away who are fleeing violence and persecution? And I'm honored that the city of Chicago partnered with the Catholic Church to make sure that the children from Guatemala, Honduras, and all the parts of Central America know that they have a place to call home. And that the Catholic Church would do that. And I would say to the Archbishop, wasn't here but 2 weeks, and I want to say to the Archbishop, welcome home, and I hope you always see Chicago as your home. And we're going to tell the Pope you're not allowed to go here. As one Jewish voice to the Pope, you can't go anywhere, okay? On a second thing, I do want to say a special thank you also to my good friend Leon Panetta, who is here. And thank him for being here away from his home. You should all know. When I worked in the White House, when Leon was the chief of staff, every morning I had breakfast with Sylvia, his wife. Also, if you want to get something done in the chief of staff's office, meet the wife, guaranteed, at least at this point. So I used to come up in the morning and look into Leon's office and say a few words that is not appropriate in a family-friendly environment like this, let's just say, with the pressure. And Leon goes, you know, you're Italian, Ram. I said, am I Italian enough to date your daughter? He goes, not that Italian. And then the only other thing I will say about my good friend Leon is that towards the end of my term as chief of staff, and he was at the CIA, if you're on the desk as a chief of staff, you have your regular phone, operates in and around the White House and calls also all the other offices in the White House, and obviously calls out. But behind your desk is the big white phone, the most secure piece of telecommunication. 2 years, I guarantee you, Leon, when he was chief of staff, never rings. It goes from the Secretary of Defense, CIA, it doesn't ring at all. I'm on the phone, probably talking to Harry Reid. The phone rings. I thought it was like some wire got crossed somewhere in the White House. And it was Leon. I need to see the president, and I need to see him now. I said, Leon, what's up? He goes, I can't talk to you. I said, well, this is the most secure phone. If you can't say this, I don't know how we're going to do this. He says, you'll realize it's very important. And it was the first time of intel that they had gotten on Osama bin Laden. And so the good news is we know the white phone works. And also we know that the CIA and the men and women that protect this country also work. So thank you, Leon, for your service to the country. Thank you for being here. I do want to also, if I can, is personally thank JB and MK for not only this great museum, but their incredible charity and commitment to the city of Chicago. And on behalf of the city of Chicago, I want to thank both of you for your commitment to the cultural and educational enrichment. So you know, literally about every student in CPS goes through, not every, but almost every high school, kids go through the museum. And every officer in the Chicago Police Department, through their training, has to have a tour of the museum to become a Chicago police officer. And I want to thank you for providing that educational opportunity for our students and our police officers in the city of Chicago, and for the effort. And I also want to thank and congratulate both Terry Duffy as well as Harvey Miller and all the other museum staff leadership for your honor and being recognized for your commitment. Thank you very much, both of you, for your effort. You can give them a hand if you could. I do want to, tonight we obviously, as other times, talk about never forgetting, remembering. And I don't want to, on this dinner, because I know there's people of multiple parties and different views on politics, but I want to make a note because we're going through something as a country very particular. And that is when, in the 30s, when there's a rise of discussion of use of anti-Semitism and isolation of Jews, the world was silent. The world did not speak up because if it was okay to happen to the Jews, it wasn't us. It was fine. And that allowance of that rhetoric of hatred permitted an environment and a context at each step, the erosion of people's rights, their civil rights, and our human dignity. And if we're going to have, and we are, the city that not only the museum in Washington raises more money, the city that has its own museum, and the city with more survivors, we have a moral obligation to not only support these institutions, but when we see the language of hatred, the language of isolation, the language of using immigrants or Muslims to score political points, we should not allow that debate to exist in this country. To say that we should not forget, that we always must remember, means that when you see a discussion, and I don't call it a discussion, but the use of other people, to isolate, to deposit all our problems on. I would say this, Leon Panetta and Rahm Emanuel, you are looking at the grandson of an immigrant, the son of an immigrant. America is built on the notion of inclusion, not exclusion. My grandfather came from a small area called Moldova. 13 years old, 1917, not a word of English. To come to a place he couldn't even pronounce the word Chicago, to meet a third cousin he never knew. He's a meat cutter, truck driver. His grandson is the mayor of this city. This is the greatest city in America and the greatest city in the country and the greatest country in the world because immigrants from wherever they are can come here and through sacrifice and struggle, give their children and their grandchildren a chance at the American dream. And we cannot, regardless, we'll have a debate, but regardless of your political view, we cannot allow in this country that is a beacon of hope around the world, whether you come from the Pacific, the Atlantic, or the Rio, you come here because you see America as an idea, not just a place. And we cannot allow as a country, and we as a city, with over 140 languages spoken in our school system, allow a group of people, based on faith, based on color, or based on their geography, to be isolated from the mainstream of who we are. Our values are inclusion. Supic, Croatian. Durbin, Lithuanian. Panetta, I don't know what that is, Italian. Emanuel, Moldova. Everybody here, regardless of where you came. So in a night and a dinner that is to not only honor those who've made the ultimate journey to America, that where we honor the notion and concept never to forget, but it's never to forget because as we go forward, to use that image, and not to look back, but to look forward to guide us in our moral judgment and our action. Chicago has always had and always will be a city and a welcome city. Regardless of what journey you took, you always have a chance to give your children a chance at a better place. And as long as we allow the language of hate to exist, a language that isolates and demonizes somebody because they are different, we will never be what we can be. And so to everybody that's here to support this wonderful museum, not just to look back, but to look forward and guide us, I want to thank all of you for making this institution its home here in the city of Chicago.